Good morning, everybody. To start our lesson, let's have our word of the day. Our word of the day is solace. Solace means comfort or relief. For example, may the poor and the sick find solace. So again, solace. To start off our discussion on position paper, I'd like you to ponder on the following questions. First, what instances do you persuade people? And the other one is, how do you persuade? Let me give you some examples. When you say persuade, it means that you are trying to sway, convince, or present your arguments to someone else. And most of the time, without even knowing it, we are doing a lot of persuasion in our lives. For example, when you want to persuade your groupmate to participate in the collaborative task, when you persuade your mother to give you this certain amount of money for a certain project, and also, when you go to a job interview, you are also trying to persuade the employer to hire you by giving them or telling them your strengths, which could be an asset to their company. With all the efforts that we are doing in trying to convince someone, most of the time the main reason that we want to persuade them is for them to say yes. Say yes to what we want and also say yes or agree to the beliefs that we already have. This is because simply the persuasion actually means the art of getting what you want. Okay, and persuasion will be an important tool for us to be able to have our ideas heard by other people and consider them in making decisions not only in the smaller community but our country as a whole. Take a look at the following words related to persuasion. We have sell, argue, influence, convince, advertise, motivate, communicate, change, compete, present evidence. All those words, they all pertain to persuasion. And in our world nowadays, there is an advent of technology and we are living in an emerging and fast-paced society. Most of the time, we see people expressing themselves on social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and even Twitter. And it is also evident in those social media platforms that every day people continuously take sides. For example, every time there is a certain issue, political issue, for example, you would see people comment their thoughts about one thing. And sometimes, when people cannot really make a point, they tend to attack the person and by not even providing some valid arguments. And as students, you must keep in mind that defending your point by simply saying because I think so won't help you make a case. Especially when you are in a debate and when you are going to write your position paper. You cannot just simply say what is your stand and then when you are asked why that is your stance on something, you would just say because I think so. So it would not be acceptable and you won't be able to get people to believe or consider also what you have in mind. And that is why we need to properly outline our thoughts and make valid arguments. And that is one of the purposes of a position paper. When you say position, we can actually associate a lot of words to it. Literally, it could also mean the place or where you are located. It could also be your stand on something or your point of view. And that's why position paper is also sometimes called the point of view paper. Again, it's the point of view paper because it provides your stance, your idea on a certain presented issue. Aside from being a point of view paper, a position paper is also an essay or a written report presenting a person's attitude, option, and intentions about a specific topic or issue. It is just like similar when you are conducting a debate. You try to defend the point you are in by presenting valid arguments. And in the position paper, you'd be able to make people also understand what is your attitude towards something, okay? And what could be the specific course of action or possible solutions that you can recommend in order to somehow solve the certain problem. To further continue, keep in mind that a position paper is based on facts and its main purpose is to make other people or convince other people that your point is valid or defensible. What do we mean by that? It means that you could use evidence to support your position, validate that position with reference. That's why we tend to also to include statistical data and other researches in your position paper. Another is you need to examine the strengths and weaknesses of your point. For example, um, wearing of uniform during examinations. For example, as a student, you are against wearing of uniform during examinations. So your stand is you are against. So what could be your possible arguments to support your claim that we should not anymore make students wear uniform during examinations? And as for the weaknesses, we are talking about the loopholes. What are the possible arguments or counter arguments that will be thrown at you by someone who would disagree with your point? All right? And also, evaluate possible solutions and suggest course of action. So these are the important elements that must be found in your position paper. Let's now go to the different parts of a position paper. Actually, it is just like similar to how we construct or structure our essay. So we have your introduction, body, and your conclusion. For the introduction, we have to clearly identify the issue and state the author's position, and it should be written in a way that catches the reader's attention. All right? I believe you're all familiar with how to write an introduction because you've done a lot of writing already previously in our writing task. And in the introduction, it is also where you find your thesis statement. So again, your thesis statement is your claim about a certain topic presented to you and it's supported by reasons or evidence. As for the body of the position paper, it contains several paragraphs, clarifies a portion of the position statement. These are your arguments. It presents the counter-argument, and each argument must be backed by evidence. So what is now the difference between a counter-argument and an argument? Because usually when we are formatting our position paper, we start with the body, your introduction, we start with the introduction rather, you have there your thesis statement. Next in the body, we present your counter-argument first, then followed by your arguments. And the arguments, it would be very good or it is solid if you have or if you could present at least 3 valid arguments to support your stand or your main point. And of course, you need to include statistical evidence, research, or other references to make your arguments uh, believable or solid. It was mentioned earlier that you need to present your argument as well as your counter argument. Now let's try to differentiate these two. An argument is when you propose a statement and offer some reasoning, using evidence that suggests why the statement is true. Okay? Again, an argument is what you propose to offer some reasoning for your stand. That is the argument. On the other hand, a counter-argument is when you consider a possible argument against or opposed to a particular proposed statement or some aspect. Okay? Possible argument against your stand. I'll give you an example in the next slide after we discuss conclusion. And in terms of generating a counter argument, it is done by asking yourself what someone who disagrees with you might say about each of the points you've made. Okay? Again, you ask yourself what someone who disagrees with you might say about each of the points you've made. As for the conclusion, it just summarizes the main concepts and includes suggested courses of actions and possible solutions. Let's take this example and let us formulate arguments and counter arguments. The question is, or the prompt is, should parents know if their child has a boyfriend or girlfriend? Let's say that your stand is that yes, parents should know if their child has a boyfriend or girlfriend. Alright? Now, what could be now your possible argument? So again, we said earlier that the argument is your reason or the proposed statement you offer to support your stand. So we said yes. One probable argument is that parents need to monitor their child and having them know if the child is a boyfriend or girlfriend will help them assess if the person their child is dating is really suited or appropriate for the child. That is one argument. Now let's try to formulate a counter argument. Okay? A counter argument. What might someone who disagree with you say? Okay? Your stance again is yes. As a counter argument, one who might disagree would say that the children have or the child has his or her own privacy. Okay? The child has his or her own privacy, and sometimes parents tend to go overboard if they would know that the child has a boyfriend or girlfriend. So that is the counter argument. Of course, writing the position paper entails also different steps. The first being you have to select a topic for your paper, conduct preliminary research, challenge your own topic, continue to collect supporting evidence, and create an outline. If you could remember our last performance task in the first quarter, I asked you to write an essay on different writing prompts. Without you actually knowing it, you were able to somehow write or create a position paper. If you could recall, the writing prompts include the following. First is, if the farmer's wage should be increased. Another one is, should the government double their efforts in battling COVID-19? And the last one is, should we proceed with online class even though there is no vaccine yet? So those are the questions. So those type of writing prompts entail you or make you want to make a point. Okay? So there is a topic and you conducted their preliminary research, of course, as shown in the arguments you presented in your body and the task. What are the reasons, for example, why the government must double their efforts? There are some of you there who presented at least 3 valid arguments, and that is very good because they were able to support it with references. Then challenge the topic. There are also who presented the counter arguments, collect supporting evidence, outline, and then the final paper. So those are the important information that you need to know about writing a position paper. Let me leave you this quote before I end this discussion, that the art of persuasion is an important skill and persuasion is an important element of your position paper. So that would be all. Also, the discussion notes, if you want to have the lecture materials They're all uploaded also in your Schoology account. Kindly go through the course materials and check for the handouts. If you have questions, then you can just freely ask me during our academic consultation time. That would be all. Thank you.